love that the book, like, doesn't give us real answers. We get to speculate, and that's so much fun. I absolutely love that. Hello, welcome to Sound and Fury Book Reviews. As usual, I am Tina. Today I am doing a book review of The Spawn of Spiracy by Jessie Nolan Bailey, which is a grimdark fantasy that came out in late 2021. It's a self-published title, so it is the third book in my Indie April readathon. I guess it's a readathon. It's actually part 2 to the Disaster of Dokojin series, which is sequel to the book The Jealousy of Jalis. I really loved The Jealousy of Jalis. I quite enjoyed it. So I was very excited to get into reading this book, and I'm very excited to talk to you about it today. So before I get into the review of book 2, The Spawn of Spiracy, I'm going to talk a tiny bit about Jealousy of Jalis, mainly to convince you to read it because it is really good. And also because the second part has spoilers for book 1, so I figured I would just talk for 5 sentences about the first book first. So, if you like fantasy that's grisly and full of crazy monster demons, in this case called Dokojin, and a magic system that you've never really seen before but is also kind of cryptic, and if you like hints that the people are living on the remnants of a past, more technological civilization that has since ceased to exist, and if you also like characters that are realistic and middle-aged and snarky, then I highly, highly recommend The Jealousy of Jalis. It is so good. It's honestly probably one of the best indie books I've ever read, and one of the best books I've ever read, and I keep meaning to buy a paperback copy. When I initially read it, I think I gave it a 4.5, but then looking back now, I'm like, I think I was just very confused because I actually read it when I was in the hospital after my second daughter was born, and she had to be kept overnight to be put under the lights because she had jaundice because she was born quite early. Not super early. She was born at 36 and a half weeks, so almost a preemie. And so I was kind of stuck in the hospital during COVID, had nothing else to do. So I basically read The Jealousy of Jalis, and I interspersed that with watching episodes of She-Ra Princesses of Power. So I think I was a bit befuddled because thinking about it now, I'm just like, man, I really loved that book. Anyway, that was a long-winded way of me to say, read this book. If you're going to read any indie book this year, I highly recommend The Jealousy of Jalis. So, now I'm going to talk about book 2, The Spawn of Spiracy. If you have any intention of reading The Jealousy of Jalis, just stop listening or watching now. There will be no spoilers for A Spawn of Spiracy, though, until the end, though, because I have a few things I want to talk about, but I will warn you when they are coming. So, just like its predecessor, A Spawn of Spiracy is completely enthralling. It's a pretty big book, about 450 pages, but it didn't feel like that at all. In this book, we're following 4 storylines. We've got this soldier, Annalicia, who is learning the Twister craft as a way to get to this demon called Inzarius, this Dokojin that has bonded itself to her, and he's literally kind of on her back, clawing at her all the time. She's also simultaneously hating the Twisters. So she's got a very interesting thing going on. Then there's Jalis, who is trying to find her brother, Karathan, to apologize and atone for her actions when they were teenagers. Karathan himself is a new point of view in this book, and he is part of a new tribe and wrestling with his hatred of Jalis over what she did, as well as his forbidden love for a fellow warrior. We also have Milo. He's like this woodsman, that's kind of what I refer to him as, who is trying to figure out how to craft a potion to help Hydrum, who is the kind of leader of this tribe that's been kind of going crazy and killing everybody and causing all these problems, to help this guy get this Dokojin Dajarja, who's possessing him, out of him. Oh, and through all of this, there's Spiracy, a new Dokojin who's very mysterious, and she's not of the usual variety. So, that might seem like a lot, and while 3 of the stories exist separately from one another, they are woven together by various small details. It's quite intricate how the threads come together in the end, and it's not just one big reveal at the end. These things kind of are revealed to all the characters in different times in the novel, but at the end, the story is cohesive. It's really well done. The plot is just fantastic. The story moves at a fast pace, but there's still a great amount of tension. It's so good. As with the first book, I really liked the characters. Annalicia is this salty, bitter, tough-as-nails soldier who uses her stubbornness as a way to get shit done. What's interesting about her arc is that while Inzarius inhabits more and more of her mind, she seems to be having trouble retaining her humanity. She grows less and less troubled by violence and death and has no qualms about using violence herself to simply propel people out of the way. So she was always a fighter in the first book, but this change to her character, making her less and less kind of human, is gradual and artfully done. It suggests that maybe the Dokojin are more reflection of humans than people would care to admit, perhaps. We still don't know kind of where the Dokojin came from, because they're kind of like, I kind of refer them as like demon monsters, but we don't really know. And I wonder if maybe Inzerius latched onto Annalisia for a reason. This, I'm not spoiling anything, this book doesn't talk about that. It's just these theories that I have that I hope are kind of addressed in book 3. Like the first book, while Jalis has some chapters in her point of view, the book is less about her, but the repercussions for what she's done. Which is fine by me, because Jalis is a hard-to-like character. You don't hate her, but the sympathy for her is pretty lacking, and she's pretty weak and kind of whiny. So it's actually, I mean, it's good to have those, because I think it's important to have characters that are not all strong badasses. So she's a good kind of foil for her brother and for Annalisia. But yeah, I don't really like Jalis that much. Maigo's sections were short and sweet, with some interesting developments and quite an evocative last chapter. I really like kind of his little scenes in the woods, and it's fun. Karothan's point of view was new and quite fascinating, as well as bringing in some queer representation. I can't remember if the first book had that or not. I absolutely loved the side plot about his forbidden love of his fellow soldier, and how it had nothing to do with, you know, how this forbiddenness had nothing to do with being gay, but because the man that Karothan loves, Orphem, is bonded to another dude in this kind of May-December romance. I love May-December romance. This added a bit of lightness to an otherwise perpetually dark tone from the rest of the book, and I really loved it. I really loved this kind of like side story. It also shows that, you know, while all this crazy shit is happening, you still care about your personal, you know, your personal life, and I liked that aspect. In terms of the writing, Nolan Bailey's style is a great mix of description and dialogue that's easy to understand. Even with weird ethereal concepts taking over a good chunk of the story, it's still incredibly approachable. He has some great similes here and there, but I wouldn't call the writing like flowery. Like, for example, he has a metaphor I really liked was, today she felt like a leaf trampled under the hooves of too many horses. In this instance, I feel you, Jalis. I feel like that all the time. As with the last book, the one thing I will say as like a critique is that I'm still having trouble understanding how these how big these tribes are and how they function as a society. So I hope book 3 gives us a bit more info into that. It seems like there's only warriors and scouts in this world. We never see kind of like the people themselves. But I mean, the Dokojin are incredibly cool as a concept, and so I don't really care too much about the people. I'm just having trouble sometimes picturing like what do their cities look like. That kind of thing. Like, what kind of infrastructure do they have? I don't know why I'm always so focused on these boring topics, but I guess it's because I'm old. So, overall, though, I absolutely loved this book, perhaps even more than the first one, and I am super looking forward to the next one, and I intend on reading it right away this time, not waiting like 4 months. Like, I don't know why I was doing that, but whatever. My bad. So thank you for watching. I hope you liked that. If you have read this book, let me know in the comments. If you have not, check it out. Though really, I don't think you should have listened to this if you haven't read the first book. But you do you. Okay? So I'm just going to jump into some spoilers right now, and thanks for watching. So. The part when Raijit takes them into the cavern, and there are these massive shells. I pictured them kind of like the Sentinels from X-Men a bit, but more like human-like. And then Orphem speculates that the Dokojin somehow possess these robots in order to attack people. I'm like, oh, it's like Attack on Titan meets Pacific Rim. And I was like, what is this? It's awesome. So I really love that the book, like, you know, doesn't give us real answers where you get to speculate, and that's so much fun. I absolutely love that. I also really liked the part when Annalisia learns about Spiracy and Ivor calls her a her, and Annalisia gives this response. Relegating a gender to a Dokojin is an insult to anyone who identifies under that label. I loved that. That was so poignant and interesting. It helped me understand why I hate when people refer to boats and cars as she. It's similar, I think, in that relegating a gender to an inanimate object to be owned and controlled is dehumanizing to everyone who identifies as that label. If we just as often referred to boats and sports cars as he instead, then okay, fine, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. But because these objects, traditionally owned and operated primarily by men, are always she, it's kind of gross, and let's just stop doing it. And lastly, oh my god, that part when Cephas tells Karothan that he's okay with him being with Orphem as long as he's part of the relationship, I was like, I love that. I also love how Cephas starts off being unlikable due to our perception of him based on Carathan's perspective, and then we're shown that Carathan is the one being kind of a dick and unreasonable. I absolutely loved that trajectory. It's so good, and it's not overly dramatic. It's just people being adults for once, and I completely, completely loved it. And yeah, so if you've read this, let me know if you liked those scenes as well. And yeah, thanks for watching. Bye.